This is the Dive Into Discovery podcast, where curiosity meets insight, and every conversation uncovers a new layer of understanding.
Welcome to today's Dive Into Discovery. We're your hosts, Theo and Alex.
And today, we're tackling one of America's oldest and most baffling mysteries.
The lost colony of Roanoke.
Yeah, it's a case. It's captivated historians and armchair detectives for centuries. A whole settlement vanished, seemingly without a trace, just a handful of cryptic clues left behind.
You've probably heard the basic story. 115 English settlers disappear from Roanoke Island in the late 16th century, leaving behind just the word Croatoan carved into a post. But the story's much more complex, intriguing than just like, poof, they're gone.
It certainly is. To really understand the mystery, we need to delve into the historical context. We're talking about the early days of English colonization in the New World, a time of ambition, danger, and constant struggle for survival.
Okay, let's unpack that. So the colony was founded in 1587, funded by Sir Walter Raleigh. Yes, that's Sir Walter Raleigh. What were the goals of the colony?
The Roanoke Colony, like many others at the time, was intended as a strategic outpost for England. It was about establishing a foothold in the New World, securing trade routes, and ultimately expanding the British Empire.
Ambitious, to say the least.
Yeah.
So what happened? Did they just land and everyone immediately disappeared?
Not quite. The initial landing went relatively smoothly, but just a few months later, the colony's governor, John White, returned to England for supplies. He intended to be back soon, but due to the war with Spain, he was delayed.
And this is where things start to get interesting, right?
This is where it gets really interesting. White finally returned to Roanoke in 1590, a full 3 years later, only to find the settlement completely deserted.
No settlers. No signs of struggle. Just the word Croatoan. That's got to be one of the most chilling discoveries in history.
It certainly ranks up there, and that single word, Croatoan, has fueled countless theories and speculations over the centuries.
Okay, so let's dive into those theories. The most popular one, at least from what I've heard, is that the colonists assimilated with the local Native American tribe, also called the Croatoan.
Right.
That's the theory that's gained the most traction over time. It's
Yeah.
certainly a compelling idea. Faced with hardship and dwindling supplies, the colonists might have sought refuge with the Croatoan, who lived on a nearby island, now Hatteras Island.
So instead of vanishing, they just moved in with neighbors. That makes a strange kind of sense.
There's actually some evidence that supports this theory. Later, settlers at Jamestown reported hearing rumors of Europeans living among Native American tribes in the area.
I'm curious about those rumors. What kind of Europeans were they talking about? Did they specifically mention Roanoke?
Unfortunately, the accounts are vague. We don't have firsthand narratives from those Jamestown settlers, just mentions in letters and reports. But added to the intrigue are archaeological digs on Hatteras Island that have uncovered European-style artifacts in Native American settlements. Things like pottery shards and iron tools that could be linked to the lost colonists. Wow, that's some pretty tantalizing evidence. But if these artifacts are European, are we sure they're English? Could they be from, say, Spanish explorers?
That's a great question. And it brings us to another theory about Roanoke's disappearance. Spanish interference. Remember, England and Spain were rivals at this time, vying for control of the New World.
Right, so maybe the Spanish attacked the Roanoke colony. That would explain the lack of settlers. But what about the Croatoan carving? It seems unlikely the Spanish would have left that behind.
Exactly. The Croatoan carving is a real head-scratcher, no matter which theory you consider. And that's what makes this mystery so captivating. It's like a giant puzzle with missing pieces.
So we've got the assimilation theory and the possibility of Spanish involvement. Are there any other explanations for what might have happened to the Roanoke colonists?
There are, and some of them are quite intriguing. One possibility is that the colonists attempted to relocate to a safer or more resource-rich location. Remember, they were struggling to survive, and the threat of drought, starvation, and conflict with other tribes was very real.
So they might have packed up and moved further inland, maybe even deeper into the wilderness.
Precisely. And this idea gains some credence when you consider John White's maps, detailed maps of the area that he created. These maps contain hidden markings, almost like secret codes, that some believe indicate a planned relocation of the settlers.
Hold on. Secret codes on a map? That sounds straight out of a pirate movie. What do those markings suggest?
Well, they've been interpreted as pointing to a location further inland, perhaps near a river or a more defensible position. It's all speculation, of course. But it's a tantalizing detail that adds another layer to the mystery.
So even the governor might have been in on this secret move. That really shakes things up.
It certainly complicates the narrative. And it's worth noting that there's another map that throws a wrench into the whole mystery, the Zuniga map. This map, created in 1607 by Spanish informants, suggests that there were English settlers living inland at that time.
Wow. So if the Zuniga map is accurate, that means the Roanoke colonists might have survived for years after whites returned to England. But then why didn't they try to contact him or other English settlements?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Maybe they feared reprisals from the Spanish. Maybe they were integrated so deeply into Native American society that they had no desire to return to English life. Or maybe something else happened to them entirely.
Okay, so I've got assimilation, Spanish interference, a possible planned relocation. It's a lot to consider. But before we get too deep into those possibilities, I want to go back to the Croatoan carving. What do we know about the Croatoan tribe themselves? Were they really friendly with the colonists?
That's a key piece of the puzzle, and unfortunately the historical record is somewhat murky. We know the Croatoan were Algonquin-speaking people who inhabited Hatteras Island and parts of the mainland. Early accounts suggest they had relatively peaceful relations with the first Roanoke colonists, even engaging in trade.
So it's not entirely outlandish to think that the colonists might have sought their help when things got tough?
Precisely. But we have to remember that these accounts are from the perspective of the English colonists. We don't have the Croatoan side of the story.
Which makes perfect sense. It's
Yeah.
easy to forget that we're dealing with different cultures, different languages, different ways of seeing the world.
Exactly. And that's where the limitations of historical sources come into play. We're relying on fragmentary evidence, often biased accounts, and a lot of educated guesswork.
So while the assimilation theory is tempting, it's not necessarily a slam dunk.
Not at all. And it's worth exploring some of the challenges to that theory.
All right, let's do that. What are some of the arguments against the colonists having joined the Croatoan tribe?
Well, some historians argue that the Croatoans simply wouldn't have had the resources to absorb a large group of colonists. They were a relatively small tribe, and incorporating over 100 people into their society would have been a significant strain.
That's a fair point. And what about the idea of Europeans living among Native Americans in the area? Were there any concrete sightings or interactions that support that?
There are scattered reports, but nothing definitive. And again, those reports are often filtered through the lens of English colonists, who might have had their own biases and agendas.
So it's like we're piecing together a puzzle where some of the pieces are missing, and the ones we do have might be from different puzzles altogether.
That's a great analogy, and it's important to acknowledge that we might never have a complete picture of what happened at Roanoke. The passage of time, the loss of records, the limitations of archaeology, these all contribute to the enduring mystery.
But that doesn't mean we should stop searching for answers, right?
Absolutely not. The search itself is valuable. It forces us to confront the gaps in our knowledge, to grapple with ambiguity, and to appreciate the complexities of history.
And who knows, maybe one day a new discovery will shed light on the fate of the Roanoke colonists and bring this centuries-old mystery to a close.
It's certainly possible. Archaeological excavations are still ongoing at Roanoke Island, using cutting-edge technology like ground-penetrating radar and DNA analysis.
So there's still hope that we might uncover some long-lost clue, some piece of evidence that rewrites the story as we know it.
There's always hope. And in the meantime, the Roanoke mystery continues to fascinate, to inspire us to dig deeper, to question our assumptions, and to appreciate the enduring power of the unknown.
I don't know about you, but I'm even more intrigued now than I was before we started this deep dive. But I'm also realizing that the answer might not be as simple as I once thought.
That's the beauty of historical mysteries. They challenge us to think critically, to consider multiple perspectives, and to embrace the fact that some questions might never have definitive answers.
And in the case of Roanoke, it seems like every answer just leads to more questions.
That's the journey we're on, and the further we go, the more fascinating the journey becomes.
So what's next on our journey into the Roanoke mystery?
Well, we've talked about the prevailing theories, but there are some less discussed possibilities that are equally intriguing. For instance, some researchers believe the colonists might have succumbed to a little-known threat, a severe drought that gripped the region during that time.
A drought. That's not something you usually hear about when discussing Roanoke. Tell me more about that.
It's a fascinating piece of the puzzle that often gets overlooked. But thanks to a technique called dendrochronology, which is the study of tree rings, we know that a severe drought occurred in the region around the time the Roanoke colonists disappeared.
Wait, hold on. You can tell there was a drought just by looking at tree rings.
It's incredible, isn't it? You see, trees are like living historical records. Their rings reflect the growing conditions each year. A wider ring indicates a good year with plenty of rain, while a narrow ring suggests hardship, like a drought.
So by analyzing the rings of old trees in the Roanoke area, scientists were able to confirm that a drought happened around 1590.
Exactly. And this drought was severe enough to have had a devastating impact on the colony. Imagine their crops failing, their water sources drying up, their ability to sustain themselves diminishing rapidly.
That paints a grim picture. It makes you wonder if the drought might have been the catalyst for their disappearance.
It's certainly a plausible scenario. Faced with starvation and dwindling resources, the colonists might have been forced to make desperate choices.
Choices like joining the Croatoan, relocating to a new area, or even attempting a perilous sea voyage back to England or another colony.
Precisely. The drought theory doesn't necessarily contradict the other theories, but it adds another layer of complexity and raises some thought-provoking questions.
Like if the drought was so severe, why didn't John White notice any signs of it when he returned to Roanoke?
That's a valid point, and it's one of the reasons why the drought theory remains somewhat controversial. Some historians believe the drought might have ended before White's arrival, while others argue that the evidence is too inconclusive to draw any firm conclusions.
So it's another piece of the puzzle that doesn't quite fit neatly into place.
Exactly, but that's what makes the Roanoke mystery so captivating. It's a constant process of piecing together clues, weighing evidence, and adjusting our understanding as new information emerges.
Okay, so we've got the drought theory added to our list of possibilities, but I have to admit, I'm still hung up on the Croatoan carving. It's such a specific detail. What are some of the interpretations of that word?
Well, the most straightforward interpretation is that it's a simple message, indicating that the colonists had gone to Croatoan Island, either voluntarily or by force. But there are other, more nuanced interpretations.
For example?
Some researchers believe that Croatoan might have been a prearranged signal, a code word agreed upon between White and the colonists, in case they were forced to relocate.
So instead of a destination, it was more like a distress signal.
Exactly. And this interpretation gains some weight when you consider the other carving found at the site, CRO etched into a tree. Some believe this might have been an incomplete message, perhaps interrupted by some unforeseen event.
It's like a whisper from the past, a desperate attempt to communicate that something had gone wrong.
It certainly adds to the eerie and mysterious nature of the whole affair.
So is there any consensus among historians about what Croatoan really means?
Unfortunately, no. It remains one of the most hotly debated aspects of the Roanoke mystery. And it's likely to remain that way, unless some groundbreaking new evidence emerges.
It's amazing to think that a single word can hold so much weight, so much mystery. It's a reminder that even the smallest details can be incredibly significant when trying to unravel the past.
Well said. And it's those small details, those seemingly insignificant clues, that often lead to the biggest breakthroughs in historical research.
Speaking of breakthroughs, has modern technology shed any new light on the Roanoke mystery? I know you mentioned DNA analysis earlier.
Yes. DNA testing has become a valuable tool for historians and archaeologists. In the case of Roanoke, researchers have been analyzing DNA samples from descendants of both the colonists and the Croatoan tribe.
So are they hoping to find a genetic link that proves the colonists assimilated with the Croatoan?
That's one of the goals. But it's a complex and challenging process. We're talking about tracing ancestry back over 400 years, which can be like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Have they found any conclusive evidence so far?
There have been some intriguing leads, but nothing definitive. For example, some researchers claim to have identified DNA markers that suggest a connection between certain families in the Outer Banks region and the Roanoke colonists.
But those claims are still being debated, right?
Exactly. The field of genetic genealogy is relatively new, and the interpretation of DNA evidence can be tricky.
So while DNA testing holds a lot of promise, it's not a magic bullet that will instantly solve the Roanoke mystery.
That's right. It's just one tool in the historian's toolkit, and it needs to be used carefully and in conjunction with other forms of evidence.
So where does that leave us? We've explored the prevailing theories, the drought hypothesis, the mysterious Croatoan carving, and the potential of DNA analysis. It seems like we've covered a lot of ground, but I still have so many questions.
That's the nature of the Roanoke mystery. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know. But that's also what makes it so fascinating. It's a constant process of discovery, of reinterpreting the past, and of challenging our assumptions.
And even if we never find a definitive answer, the search itself is incredibly valuable.
I completely agree. The Roanoke mystery forces us to grapple with the limitations of historical knowledge, the complexities of human interaction, and the enduring power of the unknown.
It's also a reminder that history is not just a collection of facts and dates. It's a living, breathing tapestry woven with human stories, triumphs, tragedies, and enduring mysteries.
Beautifully put. And the Roanoke Colony, lost but not forgotten, serves as a powerful symbol of that idea.
Well, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on one more aspect of the Roanoke mystery, the human element. What was life like for those colonists? What were their hopes and fears?
That's a question that historians and writers have grappled with for centuries. We can glean some insights from the few surviving letters and journals, but much of their daily lives remains shrouded in mystery.
But we can imagine, can't we? A group of men, women, and children setting sail for an unknown land filled with a mix of hope, trepidation, and a thirst for adventure.
Absolutely. They were leaving behind everything they knew, venturing into a vast and unfamiliar wilderness, facing unimaginable challenges.
It makes you wonder what they thought when they first set foot on Roanoke Island. What did they see? What did they smell? What did they feel?
It must have been a sensory overload, the sights and sounds of a new world, the dense forests, the unfamiliar wildlife, the encounters with Native Americans.
And then the struggle to build a life,
Right.
to cultivate the land, to defend themselves against the elements and potential threats.
It was a constant battle for survival, and as we've discussed, the historical record suggests that they faced numerous challenges: disease starvation, conflict with neighboring tribes, and possibly even a devastating drought.
It makes the mystery of their disappearance even more poignant. These were real people with families, hopes, and dreams, and somewhere along the way, their story was cut short.
It's a stark reminder of the fragility of human life, especially in the face of the unknown.
And it's a reminder that history is not just about grand narratives and sweeping events. It's also about the individual lives that make up those narratives, the hopes and fears, the triumphs and tragedies, the stories that are lost, and the stories that are remembered.
Well said. And in the case of Roanoke, even though their story remains incomplete, their legacy endures.
Because the mystery of their disappearance continues to fascinate us, to challenge us to think critically, and to appreciate the complexities of the past.
Exactly. And as we continue to explore the Roanoke mystery, we're not just searching for answers about their fate. We're also searching for a deeper understanding of ourselves, our history, and the human condition.
And that journey into the unknown is what makes the Roanoke Colony such an enduring and captivating story.
It's a story that speaks to our innate curiosity, our desire to unravel secrets, and our fascination with the enduring power of the past.
And it's a story that, despite the passage of time, continues to remind us that sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
Because those unanswered questions are what keep us searching, keep us exploring, and keep us connected to the enduring mystery of the Roanoke Colony. As we kind of dig deeper into this whole mystery, it's important to remember that the Roanoke Colony, it wasn't just like a collection of buildings and artifacts.
It was real
There.
people, with lives, families, dreams.
Exactly. Imagine their journey across the vast Atlantic, the trepidation, the excitement they must have felt upon landing in this new world.
Yeah, it must have been just a sensory overload, right?
Well-
The sights, the sounds, the smells, everything's so different from what they knew.
And then the daunting task of building a life from scratch in a completely unfamiliar environment.
Faced with challenges we can hardly fathom today, Disease, starvation, the constant threat of conflict.
And all this while trying to maintain some semblance of their, English culture and tradition.
Yeah, it really makes you appreciate the resilience of those early colonists.
Absolutely. And their story, though, shrouded in mystery, has resonated through the centuries, capturing the imaginations of historians, writers, and artists alike.
Speaking of that, I find it fascinating how the Roanoke mystery has permeated popular culture. We've got books, plays, even TV shows dedicated to exploring this event.
Yeah, it's a testament to the enduring power of unsolved mysteries. They tap into our innate curiosity, our desire to make sense of the unknown.
And in the case of Roanoke, the lack of a definitive answer only adds to the intrigue. It allows us to fill in the gaps, with our own theories and interpretations.
Precisely, and each generation brings a new perspective to the mystery, reinterpreting the evidence and exploring different possibilities.
It's like a conversation that spans centuries, a collective effort to piece together the puzzle of Roanoke.
And that conversation has taken many forms. From scholarly articles to fictional narratives, the Roanoke story continues to evolve.
I'm particularly intrigued by the long-running outdoor drama, The Lost Colony, performed right here on Roanoke Island.
Oh yeah, it's a tradition that dates back to the 1930s, a testament to the enduring fascination with this historical mystery.
Imagine sitting under the stars on Roanoke Island, watching the story of the lost colonists unfold before your very eyes.
It must be a powerful experience, connecting the audience to the past in a visceral way.
And it speaks to the way history can transcend the confines of textbooks and archives.
Right, it becomes a living, breathing narrative, something that we can engage with on an emotional and intellectual level.
But as we delve deeper into the cultural representations of Roanoke, it's important to remember that they're not always historically accurate.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. Fiction often takes liberties with the facts, embellishing details and sometimes even inventing entire storylines.
So while these cultural representations can be entertaining and thought-provoking, we should always approach them with a critical eye.
And cross-reference them with the historical record
Right.
to ensure we're separating fact from fiction.
It's like sifting through layers of interpretation to get to the heart of the mystery.
And in the case of Roanoke, those layers are many and varied. From the earliest colonial accounts to the latest archaeological findings, there's a wealth of information to consider.
And as we've discussed, each piece of evidence adds another layer to the puzzle, sometimes clarifying the picture and sometimes making it even more complex.
But that's the beauty of historical research. It's a constant process of discovery, of piecing together fragments of the past to create a coherent narrative.
And even when we encounter gaps or inconsistencies,
Yeah.
those challenges only deepen our understanding.
They force us to ask new questions,
Yeah.
to consider different perspectives, to embrace the ambiguity inherent in the study of history.
So as we continue our deep dive into Roanoke, let's keep that in mind. There may not be a single definitive answer to the mystery.
For the journey itself, the exploration of the evidence, the weighing of possibilities, that's where the real value lies.
And who knows, maybe someday a new discovery will emerge, shedding light on the fate of the Roanoke colonists and bringing this centuries-old mystery to a close.
Until then, we're left to grapple with the evidence, to piece together the puzzle, and to marvel at the enduring power of the unknown.
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about the challenges those colonists faced. You painted a pretty grim picture of disease, starvation, and conflict.
And those are just some of the hardships they endured. The reality of early colonial life was often brutal and unforgiving.
Yeah, we tend to romanticize the past. But for those early settlers, it was a daily struggle for survival.
Exactly. And it's important to acknowledge that the historical record isn't always pleasant. It can be a stark reminder of the darker aspects of human history.
So while we're exploring the theories and mysteries surrounding Roanoke, let's not forget the human cost, the lives that were lost, the dreams that were shattered.
Well said. It's a sobering reminder that behind every historical event, there are individual stories of courage, resilience, and sometimes tragedy.
And those stories, even if lost to time, deserve to be remembered and honored.
Absolutely, because they remind us that history is not just about dates and events.
It's about the lives of real people, their struggles, their triumphs, and their enduring impact on the world.
And in the case of Roanoke, even though the colonists themselves vanished, their story continues to resonate, reminding us of the fragility of human endeavor and the enduring power of the past.
Now, we've talked a lot about this various theories surrounding Roanoke's disappearance. Is there one that you find particularly compelling?
That's a tough question. While each theory has its strengths and weaknesses, I'm particularly drawn to the idea of a planned relocation, perhaps prompted by the drought or other environmental pressures.
A strategic move to a more favorable location, maybe even further inland, where they might have encountered those English settlers mentioned in the Zuniga map.
Precisely. It aligns with the hidden markings on John White's maps and offers a plausible explanation for why they seemingly vanished without a trace.
But wouldn't they have left some kind of message for White, indicating their intentions?
Perhaps they did, but the message was lost, destroyed, or misinterpreted. Or maybe they intended to contact him later, once they had established themselves in their new location.
It's also possible that their relocation didn't go as planned. They could have encountered hostile tribes, succumbed to disease,
Hmm?
or simply gotten lost in the vast wilderness.
Those are all valid possibilities, and it highlights the fact that even the best laid plans can go awry, especially in such an unpredictable and unforgiving environment.
It's a reminder that history is rarely straightforward. There are always unforeseen circumstances, unexpected twists of fate that can alter the course of events.
And in the case of Roanoke, those twists of fate have left us with a mystery that continues to captivate and intrigue us. Centuries later.
Speaking of twists of fate, our research mentions some darker theories about Roanoke. Things like cannibalism and attacks by hostile tribes. Are those possibilities worth considering?
Well, it's important to approach such theories with caution. While we can't rule out any possibility, we need to be mindful of sensationalism and focus on the evidence or lack thereof.
All right, it's easy to get caught up in the more dramatic possibilities,
Yeah.
but we should always strive for a balanced and objective assessment of the facts.
Exactly. And in the case of Roanoke, the evidence for those darker theories is thin at best. While early colonial history was often brutal and fraught with conflict, we shouldn't jump to conclusions without solid evidence.
So while it's tempting to delve into the more gruesome possibilities, we should focus on the theories that are supported by historical evidence and logical reasoning.
And remember that the Roanoke mystery is compelling enough without resorting to sensationalism. The documented history, the tantalizing clues, the unanswered questions, those are more than enough to spark our imaginations and fuel our curiosity.
And as we've discussed, the pursuit of answers, even if they remain elusive, can lead to unexpected discoveries and a deeper understanding of the past.
It's a journey worth taking, and in the case of Roanoke, that journey takes us through uncharted territories of history, challenging our assumptions, sparking our curiosity, and reminding us that the past is never truly lost, as long as we continue to seek it out.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up part 2 of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore.
In our next installment, we'll delve into the legacy of Roanoke, its impact on American culture, and the ongoing efforts to uncover new clues about the fate of the lost colony.
We'll examine the ways in which the Roanoke story has been interpreted and reinterpreted over the centuries.
And we'll discuss the importance of preserving and learning from this fascinating chapter in American history.
So stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive into the Roanoke Colony. We'll be back soon with more intriguing details, thought-provoking insights, and perhaps even a few surprises. Welcome back to our deep dive, into the Roanoke mystery.
We've explored the historical context, the theories, the evidence or lack thereof.
We've pondered the Croatoan carving, considered the possibility of a drought, and even delved into the realm of DNA analysis.
But as we kind of wrap up our exploration, I want to shift our focus to something equally important, the legacy of Roanoke.
Yeah, what impact has this mystery had on American culture and our understanding of the past?
Well, the story of the lost colony, it's captivated the American imagination for centuries.
It's become woven into our folklore, our literature, even our national identity.
Think about it. The image of a vanished settlement, a whisper of a word left behind. It speaks to something deep within us.
A fascination with the unknown, a yearning to understand the past, perhaps even a fear of disappearing ourselves.
And that fascination has manifested in countless ways. We see it in the books, plays, and films that have attempted to reimagine the Roanoke story.
We hear it in the whispered tales, passed down through generations on the Outer Banks.
We feel it in the very soil of Roanoke Island, a place where history and mystery intertwine.
It's as if the lost colony has become a symbol, a metaphor for something larger than itself.
Yeah, some see it as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragility of early settlements and the challenges of encountering the unknown.
Others view it as a testament to the enduring human spirit, the will to survive against all odds.
And still others interpret it as a reflection of the complex relationship between European colonists and Native Americans.
A relationship marked by both cooperation and conflict, understanding and misunderstanding.
The Roanoke story, despite its lack of a clear resolution, offers a rich tapestry of themes and interpretations.
It challenges us to confront the ambiguity of the past, to acknowledge the gaps in our knowledge, and to grapple with the complexities of human history.
And that, I believe, is one of the most valuable legacies of Roanoke.
It reminds us that history is not a static, fixed narrative.
It's an ongoing process of discovery, interpretation, and reinterpretation.
And each generation brings its own perspective,
Yeah.
its own questions, its own attempts to make sense of the past.
So as we move forward, let's carry with us the lessons we've learned from our deep dive into Roanoke.
Let's embrace the ambiguity,
Right.
the mystery, the unanswered questions.
Let's continue to explore, to research, to excavate both the physical and the intellectual landscape.
And perhaps someday, we'll uncover a new piece of the puzzle, a clue that sheds light on the fate of the lost colonists.
But even if we don't, the search itself will have been worthwhile.
Because it's through that search, through our collective efforts to understand the past, that we connect with something larger than ourselves.
We tap into the shared human experience, the enduring legacy of those who came before us.
And we gain a deeper appreciation for the complexities, the beauty, and the enduring mystery of history itself. So as we conclude this deep dive into the Roanoke Colony, we leave you with this thought.
The mystery may remain unsolved, but the story continues to unfold.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of discovery alive.
Because in the words of the great historian Will Durant, civilization exists by geological consent, subject to change without notice.
And sometimes those changes leave behind mysteries that challenge us to dig deeper, to think critically, and to connect with the enduring power of the past.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of the Roanoke mystery.
We hope you've enjoyed the dive and come away with a renewed sense of wonder about the complexities of history.
What did you think of this week's episode? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to join us next time as we dive even deeper. And as always, stay curious, because you never know what discoveries are just around the corner.